Hello everyone and welcome to yet another episode of the Team Fortress 2 mapping series, I guess you'd call it. As mentioned briefly last time, I'll basically this one be working on, well, the ending part of the actual payloads tracks. I didn't mention the tracks back then, but I'll basically be working on the last path for it to get to the very end. Previously I have been working on, not on camera or anything, but I've been working on the actual gates to let it through, which will get seen at the end of this video as well. But, anyways, here, it basically leads from the last point where the payload is going to, onto, how should I put it? Basically onto this gate, as mentioned. So it's from there point onto the very, very last one where it basically will blow up in theory. So, I've made everything up until this last point, and now I have to make the last path, so to say, which I'll be doing here. So it's a combination between finding the right props, being the tracks basically, and then as well trying to get an actual track for the car to follow at the same time. Or not at the same time, but as well, since the tracks we're actually making right here, or putting up right here, do not matter per se in terms of the card. That's only to make a bit more visual for the player, basically, to have a bit of a, I won't say an easier time, but for it to look a bit more realistic. Right here we're actually working a bit with the ground, sculpting that like I sculpted the hills/mountains the last time, basically to make the tracks actually visible, so there's no dirt in the way, and so it looks a bit realistic, I guess you could say. Again, it's something I've spend some time on actually getting to work, since again I've built it up until this very last point, but it can still be a bit tricky to find just right angle when it's going downhill. The tracks don't always fit perfectly either, especially not when they're rotated, which makes it a bit difficult to find the right position, I guess you could say. But it's basically just about keep going until you find what seems right and looks right. I have spent a very long time doing the entire tracks, not just this one, but in general, to actually make it work and look somewhat decent. There are of course places where it doesn't look perfect, I guess you could say, but there are just things you have to accept, and that's one of them at times. But yeah, at the very start, when I start putting up these tracks, I try to find basically every single train track prop there is, and just place them together. Like I've just picked the ones I actually have lying around in other parts of the map this time, since I've used it before, and then just pick what I feel like would be fitting for the specific part I'm trying to make. That's what I do when I start from scratch. Right here we have made previous ones, and therefore could just steal a bit from other areas and put it in there. I was trying to find the right size one. Therefore, it could maybe been ideal to actually have everything laying around next to each other, but I was like, it won't be a lot of tracks really, so I'm not really gonna waste too much time looking through the prop list to find them. There you can see the work about making it quite fitting, or trying to at least. There are some that'll go into each other, etc., but it works, I would say, and that's what is the most important to me. Again, looks are important, but functionality is more important, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, you see the gray area is basically the gate mentioned before, which we in the end want the car to go to. So this is only about the train track putting up and making it functional as well, so you'll see how the card moves in the end of this. And then they're of course making it look visually nice as well, not the tracks but the actual end platform as well. It's something I'll be doing in another video, since that's not something you just do quickly. So, considering there has to be a lot of thoughts put into it, etc., which I haven't done this far, at least not to a level I feel is enough basically to justify doing that already. I mean, I have a few thoughts here and there, making some kind of wooden mine-ish thing, or then it could go in another different. I'll try that again. Go in a completely different direction while being totally metally and more or less some kind of bunker maybe, and I basically don't know which one to go for. So I'll be giving myself some time to actually figure that out and probably working on something else instead, which is something I've had a tendency to do in this map in general. Like if I bumped into something I had troubles with, basically I just left it for some time and then jumped back to it. An example could be these actual specific tracks right here, because I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted them to go to. I knew that I wanted them to be somewhere near the red base, but not entirely sure where around. And then in the end I decided, well, let's just make it a somewhat short one and then just turn it in here where the base is nothing anyway. You cannot see it right now since it's zoomed out, but you get a quite good overview throughout this video to see it. But yeah, exactly, I mean, here's somewhat of a good view, because there's nothing down there other than that currently, at least. And that justifies somewhat it being there. I mean, that's a problem of making something without planning it entirely first. I'm a bit more of a, well, bottom-up approach, I guess you would say, where I make it and then I try to make it functional afterwards, to a certain extent. I've always had somewhat of a plan what I wanted to do, had some pictures in my mind from the very start when I even began with the map. I mean, neither of the spawns was an example, the first thing built, but I still kept that in mind. But yeah, it was really something quite important to me to both have a plan, but also allow myself to go a bit off track to be able to, how should I put it, basically to get it as functional as possible. And as I'm speaking about that, you can see here where we're starting to have these white blocks pop up. They're basically the parts, or the, let's say, the invisible tracks that the card is following. Each point have a name and they are located, or let's call it, they basically have, as it all states, a next stop where it's going to. So it's about finding some kind of system which makes sense, naming wise, and then making it work both in terms of distance, etc, etc. I mean, the turns can be a bit tricky to make them look totally perfect, and I've found more or less a right way of doing that, I feel like, at least, where I just put them very close and then maybe doing from every single turn to make the card turn as nice as possible. But yes, you can see that there's about, like, I'm naming them from the last point onwards, so like D is from the 4th point and then following on, and I have, like, yeah, here you see a total of 10-ish so far, which will be added up in the end. I mean, I think it would reach around 20 in the end, if I recall correctly. Well, we'll see when I get to that point. But yeah, it's I mean, if it wasn't for the tracks, the prop ones, the ones you actually see, it wouldn't be so hard to make the ones you don't see, the ones that the card actually follows. But again, you want that confirmation, and you want the player, basically, or I do at least, to see it a bit more realistic. I'll make it look a bit nicer at least. And there I spent quite a lot of time to actually find out, okay, is this actually the right height, so to say, compared to the tracks? I was trying to find, okay, this isn't quite right, and I forgot it again and went back once more. Basically turned them a few, it's not called pixels, but whatever distance it's measured in, a few up basically, to make them look totally identical and make the card actually fit onto the tracks. That was the main thing. I mean, I wouldn't really care if it was just a matter of having the same height, but again, that wasn't the case. But we're being very close to actually having the tracks themselves done. We just finished the last ones, trying to get that one in. The last one here is the finishing one, where it goes down. The two you see by the tracks are the ones that actually make the gate open for the card itself. You don't see them currently, you'll be able to in about, well, a couple of seconds, those two. They are basically ones, when you hit the last one, the one closest to the gate, it'll open for the cards, and the other one will close it if it goes back down. Here we actually have it in motion. I recorded myself, and basically seeing how the card turns around is very pleasing to see. Indeed, it works quite well, it follows the tracks, and as we get to at just about the point where the last of those two were, the gate will open, as you see right here. I'll stop it. And then basically, and about 20 seconds will pass and it'll start going backwards if no one is pushing it forwards again. Then it hits the next block and it closes down again. Hitting the previous one again and it opens and goes down. And that's basically it from me, guys. I hope I'll see you next time. Take care.